Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is a hot and sultry day here in South Georgia, and we are back with Steelcast number 4. Yay, I made it to 4. My attention span is now officially over, right? So today we're going to be talking about really the 3 components that you need to be a good crafter or craftsman. Now, of course, this is all scientifically proven by my opinion. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt. This is simply how I have framed things for myself, and I think you might find this to be a useful tool for framing how you go about your craft. Now, of course, let me throw the disclaimer out there. If you're just out there for fun and you're there to hang out with the guys and have a beer and a fish fry and beat on some metal, man, Godspeed, vaya con Dios. I have no issue with that. The reason I'm putting this forward is for the person that's looking to really follow in the footsteps of idiots like myself that decided to do this for a living and they wanted to take it to the extreme end, whether that's reasonable, sane, or not. Okay? You will be able to find a portion of yourself in what I'm talking about today. So, apply where necessary on that end, and it's thought-provoking at the very least. So, three components. Hey, don't you guys know about the freaking components? God, let me get I need coffee. 3 components of being an effective blacksmith. It's going to be the craft, the art, and the business. Now, craft is where it all starts. Now, I've taken some flack before because I've had artists say, well, the art's the place that you start. That is bunk. That is pot-smoking hippie bunk. You do not start with art. You can do art, but it's not going to be very good because what you have to start with is craft. In the tradition of blacksmithing, the craft, it's called that way, is because you're making things that are absolutely utility. If you were to stack up just the sheer tonnage, the tonnage that was made for utility purpose versus what was made for art, it's not even a contest because it was the utility of iron that made it so freaking important to everybody. A painting was great, but it's very difficult to fight off a Mongol horde with a painting. You need a sword, right? And you need some armor. So the craft is where you really get your skill as well. If you started just doing art, you're never really going to get good at it. And yes, I said that because here's the thing. The guy that does a couple thousand nails is going to have so much more hammer skill than somebody that makes one-off pieces of art. It's not even going to be funny. So if you want to get really good at what you do, to be able to be a great artist, you've got to do a bunch of crappy S-hooks. And it goes right back to what we talked about the other day. Practice, 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 produce, produce, produce. Even if you don't like doing crappy S-hooks, make them so that you can sell them and make them so you're practicing and training yourself to do good work. That is where craft comes in. That is why you want to be a craftsman to start with. Now, once you become very good at being a crafter, then that level 2 comes in as being a good artist because your art is never going to be better than your craft. Remember that, boys and girls. Remember that. It's never going to be better than your craft. And there's a kind of a romantic pot-smoking hippie way of expressing this. I've always considered art to be a form of poetry. Okay? You with me so far? Art is poetry. But if you want to do good poetry, you have to master the language. If your English is not very good, your poetry is not going to be very good, at least your English poetry, right? Same thing with art. If you want to do really good art, you've got to have a really good craft. And that is what opens the door for you to be able to do amazing pieces. Now, I'm very proud to say I've never really been on the art side of things. But recently, I took one of my pieces and I entered it into one of the local art contests, the Albany Arts Council, and I took Best in Show. To say it was impactful on me is a bit of an understatement. Okay? Bit of an understatement. But this vanity piece was forged, it was riveted, it was the vast majority of it was traditional construction. Even in the little the chair that I made there, it was good work. I don't mind saying that. It was good work, but it stood out not because it was impressive blacksmith work. It's just that it was good blacksmith work, that my craft shone through what's arguably my lack of creativity, right? And yeah, so your crafts has to be the absolute core of your art. Now, we talked a little bit at the last couple podcasts about how important the business was, because something has to finance your craft and your art. Has to finance. All right, if you're starving to death, you're not going to be doing a lot of crafting. You're not going to be doing a lot of artwork because they don't exist in a vacuum. And the business end of it is what is so freaking terribly important, okay? That third component is having a basic understanding of how to move your work forward into the future. How do you finance it? And that is where most people fail miserably. Even if you're doing this as a relative hobby, or as many of us did, as myself did, you actually use a real job to finance your addiction, that's fine as well, but you've got to have a plan, you've got to have a purpose, and that's where business comes in. Business is not just about selling the material, it's about where you're going. Do you want to be the crafter at the rendezvous? Do you want to sell there? Is that how you finance your anvil addiction? That's a good question. What happens in 5 years? Do you want this something to be a major part of your life in 5 years? Do you want this to be something that's in part of your life at retirement? These are all business questions, and these are questions that you need to ask yourself if you want to be a top tier crafter and a workman, an artist, whatever. What's your plan? Again, I stress, if your plan is to eat hamburgers, drink a beer, and hang around the forge, then it's your social club. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, right? But if you're pushing hard, have a plan. So guys, that's it. That's the three components on that end of it. Now this is where I could absolutely step off into the weeds. You know what? Let's step off into the weeds for a second. So I talked about that schism earlier, whether you were a pot-smoking hippie or you were a redneck in a Rev War drag, right? One thing I want to point out is that those two sides of the coin have been the biggest cause for strife and division in our professional organizations from the get-go, right? From the get-go, it has always been the artists versus the crafters. You see it played out today as well. Now, I want to say something interesting, because in general, I have come from the crafter side of it. I've got this redneck accent. I was a Civil War reenactor, so that would incline me, to the crafter side. However, I'm, mentally deranged, so that actually puts me on the artist side of it. So I've been kind of an odd hybrid with all this stuff, okay? So, hang on a second, guys. There's a giant freaking spider crawling over my wall. I got to go deal with him. Hang tight. Jesus Christ, that's a big one. Okay, war has been waged, and I am glad to report that I am victorious. What I was speaking of is, again, that big division within the craft proper between the artist and the crafters. And, it's an ideological split that has really caused a lot of the problems, and I believe has been a hindrance, because everybody sees themselves as a faction or a side. And that's not, but here's the thing, that's not good for business. And I will point out, because there's been a lot of vitriol pointed toward the pot-smoking hippies, but I would point out that right now, that the people that have their crap together the most, the people that really have organized themselves and done the best business, are the pot-smoking hippies in California. There's a place called Adams Forge where Miss Heather McClarty runs, and man, do they have it together. And as a direct result, you see so much organization and business now bleeding out into the rest of our work. For example, the incredible Mark Asbury is the one who is essentially responsible for the Abana curriculum. Now, I'm going to say something here. There's been a lot of people that have had an opinion about what the curriculum is, that it's too dry, it's too high end, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something, folks. They have done something which is better than the nothing that's been done by the rest of us, okay? So if you have a complaint or a gripe about the national curriculum, we're waiting for your suggestion, right? So it's the pot smoking hippies. They're doing the best business. And I want to tell you guys, do you want to know who's going to move forward? It's going to be the pot smoking hippies. So if you are in the crafter side of it over here with me, we got to get our stuff together, okay? Because we've got to have a bit of all of it. It is all under the umbrella. It is all encompassing. And if we're going to have those three components on the individual, we need to have those three components on the national level as well. It is time to write some crap down. But that's a whole other topic for another time. I know there's a lot of you out there wringing your hands with glee wanting me to talk about Abana. Today, I am not going to bash Abana. Abana is Mother Church. And hopefully, as we move forward, especially coming out of the pandemic when there's been a fish kill of our organizations, we're going to have the opportunity to put some things back better than they were before. So, guys, that's going to wrap it up. I got to have some air conditioning because I had to cut the AC off in this room and I am starting to sweat through my wrist. It's disgusting. So, guys, thank you all so much again. By the way, please visit TrentonTie.com. We got new stock going up on the website every week. Thank you, guys, and I will see you next week.